Great. So thanks everybody for joining us today. So this is part one of our Marketing Lunch and Learn series, sponsored by Desjardins Insurance. Today's topic is marketing during an economic downturn, and our guest speaker today is Lara Veltkamp. Lara is the founder and chief engagement officer of Watershed Marketing Group, a diverse marketing strategy and consulting firm focusing on the entrepreneur who is growing and scaling their business. Referred to as a small business therapist by client, Lara Veltkamp brings more than 30 years of successful small business ownership and corporate experience to her work that has enabled dozens of business owners to quickly achieve tangible results and find the drive needed to continue to build their businesses with clarity and focus. With her dynamic, insightful, and results-getting approach, Lara is the trusted marketing advisor, consultant, and mentor to her clients. Typically running businesses from 100,000 to 55 million in revenues across diverse industries, they seek an objective ear and eye to help focus priorities, strengthen leadership, engage with stakeholders, and build momentum, which we're here to do today. So let's get started, and I will turn it over to you, Lara.
Thank you, Sandra. Listening to those intros, those bios, it's always fun when somebody else has written it for you. Okay, so today, thank you all for taking the time. First of all, I know everyone's busy and it's crazy times strategizing and just getting through the day-to-day operations. So thank you for taking the time today to be here. I've heard from a couple of you as to your goals for the session. So make sure that we get everybody accommodated in the time. We do have another session coming up, I think on the 24th of November, specifically about digital media strategies online and optimizing that. So we will talk more about strategy today, and then specifics for social and online digital on the 24th, just to give everyone a heads up. So I'd love to see you there. Okay, so let's get started. So today, the goals set for today's session are understanding the role that you have right now as the leader in your business. I'm assuming that most of you, if not all of you, are leading in your businesses. The three areas that you probably want to focus on most, the importance of cash flow and how to pivot your strategy given what's happening in the world today and after the last couple of years. So we've had a pretty large reality check with the pandemic. Everyone, as I heard from Bruce, I think you said we've survived and now we're looking to focus. And I think that's pretty clear for most of you. I would love to know, and I don't know if you have, Sandra, are reactions on the Zoom menu, are they available?
They are, yes.
Okay, great. So because we can't do polling, I'd love to know from a show of hands in the reactions, there's a little reactions menu at an option for reactions. Just raise your hand or something if you've got, if you've started your business during the pandemic. Okay, Tina, Bruce. Okay, great. And anybody, has anybody been, and there's a few others that great. Thank you, Trevor. Is there anyone who started their business on or around or between 2010 and 2020? Great. Okay. And how many have had businesses for longer than 10 years who are on the call today? Just use the reactions if you could, and just raise the hand or thumbs up. Oh, Bruce, you're changing things. All right, awesome.
Sorry,
Okay.
I had to change my answer because I was like, I didn't get the question before I answered. So,
Got it. Okay, fair enough.
Sorry.
Stuart, thank you very much, Bruce. Okay, so some of us may have been through the reality check of the last recession, 2008, 2010 financial collapse stuff, and we're sort of we're going through that again. So for those of you who've been through it already, this is a repeat, rinse and repeat. It happens about every 10 to 15 years. I mean, we can go back every decade and do this. I've been marketing since the 1980s. We're going to leave it at that. And this is cyclical. So the difference between someone who's just started a business, you may not have lived through the resilience phase or recognize this is it's going to pass, but we need to figure out how to get through it. So the news is always very interesting right now, isn't it? The top stories on the headlines today were interest rate hikes not bringing down inflation in the G7. Booming job markets may mean a rough road ahead, and inflation runs hot, and Canadians plan to cool spending on holiday gifts. It's all really great uplifting news, isn't it? So the hard facts are we're in this extended economic challenge, and nobody is going to be able to avoid this. We all are impacted either personally or otherwise. As Melissa said earlier, not just on social media, but everywhere, the rules keep changing of how we do business. But underlying everything, we'll get to that, the principles stay the same. We're figuring it all out in real time. Our business and personal exposure has been identified. And we also need to be flexible and focused, and some of our businesses won't necessarily bounce back quickly. But the other facts on the good news side are this will turn around because it's history repeating itself. We always come out of it, and we will again. We're just human nature that way. We come out of all these slumps. Big opportunities exist. Now's not the time for procrastination or perfection or procrastination. How many procrastinators are there in the crowd? I have been one in my past. I'm not asking you to out yourselves if you don't want to. Hope is as contagious as fear. So, my approach has always been, let's have a positive outlook, realistically, pragmatically positive, and that we're all more resourceful than we realize, probably our saving grace. So what is our leadership responsibility? I want to talk about this first because it's so important to how we approach how our company approaches going forward. So if you have a team and you are the leader of your team, be it if you're the president or you are the leader of the sales department or the marketing department or finance or whatever, we all have responsibilities as leaders. And if we're leaders, peer-to-peer leaders, we also have responsibilities, be that on, wherever we might be. So our jobs as leaders is that we're paid to lead. We have to make sure that we know fear makes us reactive. It takes courage to act, and doing it scared builds courage. So we need to know that we're seeing things as they are and not making them worse than they are, because if we get into that mindset of things are being worse than they are, then we get into that psychological place, and that's not good for leadership. The interesting thing on some of the inflation numbers, if you see globally, because this is not a Canada only issue, as we all know, globally, Canada is actually doing really well comparatively. So make sure we're seeing things as they are, not just it being critical, like being critically thinking about what's coming up in the news. Control that fear so we can think critically about it, and be courageous in what you go forward with. This is high level leadership stuff and mindset just to set the stage for where we're heading next. So where are you focusing on? How many of you are remember Dr. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, or have heard of Dr. Stephen Covey? Some, maybe a few. So he had, one of the things he had in his book, The 7 Habits, was the circles. The circles. One is the circle of concern, which is what everybody is worried about. This is the big stuff, all of the things that we have in our bucket to consider. We have a sphere that's within that, a subset within that of what we can influence. And we have another subset within that, much tighter, of what we can control. And right now, we need to focus on what we can control and influence, because what you focus on expands. So if we make sure that we're focusing on the things that we know and we can improve upon, or we can mitigate, that control issues then become expand to the influence stage, and then our circles expand. So it will be a ripple effect. Focus on what you can control. From a marketing standpoint, we need to focus on also what we can influence. The concern area will take care of itself longer term, but in a downturn, we really need to bring that in and focus on what we can control and influence only. Okay, so where are you focusing right now? Where are your thoughts taking you? Where are your plans leading you? Where is your focus leading you? And what can you control and what can you influence? Those are things that you should really be thinking about as the leader to make sure that you're going forward. And the fact that you're actually sitting here today in this webinar means that you're already looking at those things. So I'm glad to have you here. We need to stop a cycle and be that person that makes things better instead of making things or just continuing on the messaging. So let's make sure that we're prepared. So we're going to talk about assessing and then planning, because that's really what you guys are focusing on and what you need to be focusing on, what you need to be doing. So I have a question. How many of you actually have a marketing plan right now? A written marketing plan? Hands up. The reactions thing would be great. Sort of, maybe you have it, maybe not written down, but you're kind of thinking about it, that kind of thing. Okay, few of you, great. A lot of people, I can tell you right now, like I have been doing this a very long time with a lot of different clients in manufacturing, in distribution, in insurance and financial services, in retail, in professional services. There's like across industries, and most businesses, when I start with them, don't actually have a plan written down or haven't really itemized or expressed their plan to their staff because they don't have something that they can share. We changed that, and that's one of the biggest pivot points for making sure that you hit your success targets. So be prepared. You know what they say about planning, right? So what we need to do first is this is in the marketing field, but also in your business. We need to assess and evaluate, where are we strong? So we're going to talk about, you know, this is going to be similar to a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Where are we strong internally? What do we do? Where do we hit the numbers? Where are we doing well? Do we have systems? Do we have processes? Do we have great people? Do we have the budget behind us? Do we have great clients? Do we have good location? Do we have great product? Where are we strong, and what resources do we have available to us currently? That may be like financially, that may be a shrinking number. So we'll have to mitigate for that, but where are we strong and what do we need? And then what can we build on? So do we have a really great client experience, but we're not maybe marketing? Do we really have a weak service experience that could help us? So what can we build on? We'll go over some more questions in a few minutes. What are our vulnerabilities? Where are we most exposed? What type of clients are going to be most impacted by this economic downturn? We really need to think about those two things in order to improve, because as the economy is where it is, I mean, if they're talking about we're heading into a recession, it means we're probably already 3/4 of the way through the recession, in my experience anyway. So where are we still most exposed? How can we tighten that up? How can we mitigate for that? What clients are going to still be in that mindset of negativity? Like you've got probably 60 to 70% of your market are going to be the people who start saving, right? You've got the ones, they're going to reduce their budgets either by necessity or by caution, out of caution. You have a bottom group of 15 to 20% who are like just going to stop spending entirely because either they can't afford it or they just are in hibernation and in protective mode. And then you have a group at the top of the chart, which would be the anywhere from 10 to 15% who money's no object, money's no issue. We're just going to keep spending. So that big chunk in the middle is, unless your clients are all right up here, that big chunk in the middle is where you have to do your most work. And so you have to understand where their mindset is. So we were talking about all at the beginning where the focus is and where the fear is. And you'll have to, from a marketing standpoint, you'll have to address that fear for clients and either directly or indirectly to make them more comfortable in making the decision to do what you would like them to do and buy your services. And then the last item is where our vulnerabilities are. Cash flow. Everybody loves cash flow, right? How many of you have a cash flow already in place in a budget and or cash flow? It's very rare that I see smaller companies with this information and even some of the larger ones with this in place. So I'm going to encourage you strongly to take a look at your budgets and your cash flow and really do some number crunching. So when we come about exploring opportunities for growth and for success, really what we want to do during a time of downturn is figure out where we can capitalize, figure out where we need to mitigate for risk, and figure out what we're going to need when the recession's over, because we're really planting seeds for that perspective. As Bruce, to use your term, we've survived the pandemic. If you've survived the pandemic, you need to also now survive this section so that you can really thrive afterwards. And some companies will thrive even during this time. So be mindful of that. And the places where you're going to grow, or you're going to compare where you could be and explore opportunities, will be in these 4 areas: market penetration, product development, market development, or business diversification. These 4 quadrants, these 4 areas of consideration are really important to evaluate and assess. Do we need to, for example here, how are we uniquely positioned to help our clients? Can we add more value? Can we diversify our product offering? Or the reverse, do we need to shrink our product offering so that we're focusing on those products or services that have the highest return and profitability rates? Do we even know what those are? These things are things that we need to consider as far as growing the business or shrinking the offering. Is there a market we could expand to, move into? Or should we maintain or even tighten up our market focus? So are we offering one client group who's going to be extreme, like maybe they're going to be in the bottom part of that pyramid where they are majorly impacted given either income restraints, or if it's consumer based, or perhaps the budgets are being pulled in and tightened up if it's business to business? Where are we going to, how are we going to mitigate for those? If we have 80% of our business in that group that are going to be strongly impacted, how can we move up to the folks that aren't going to be as impacted, aren't going to tighten up as much? How can we move up to there? Do we need to get into a new market? Do we need to expand some of our service offerings based on that? And what can we do in there? So those are questions that you're going to want to ask. And then the next is, how can we best reach those clients who we know will buy, or we're planting the seed from? Like some people might have, I don't know how long your sales cycles are. They could be, I meet somebody, they buy in the store and out they go. Or I meet somebody and we have a longer sales cycle. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 3 months, maybe it's 18 months. But how do we know where they are in their buyer cycle, or how long the sales cycle is, and how do we reach them the best way? One of the smart things to do right now for small business is to look at partnerships and collaborations with other organizations or other, I'll use the word influencers, who also share that market, so also target the market, but maybe complementary to you. How can we share some of that? How can we share the market and build value and trust for those clients through a collaboration of some sort? And that could be, if we're going to talk social media, that could be an Instagram live collaboration where you're having a little interview back and forth about something to reach your consumers, or it could be collaborating with another company to share information about a certain client type, or where you're cross-selling on behalf of each other with referral marketing or something like that. So you have opportunities there to figure out and really explore what options you have to get out to those folks. Now, I see a couple of hands still raised, and if you have questions, if there's a chat opportunity, so if you could put your questions in the chat and I'll get to them as soon as I can toward the end. Unless Sandra, if you see some questions come up, you want to interrupt me, that's fine. You can put your hand up. And sorry, I should have said at the beginning, I'm sure there's questions that we'll go through, but we'll get there. So those are some of the things that you want to look at is when it comes to marketing, is how can we best reach these clients who are going to be buying? How do we know that we've got those clients who are going to be buying? How do we shift to find clients who are going to be buying? And how can we maximize our exposure to those people? All right, oops. Okay, so messaging is going to be really important. And I've got a little graph here, which will expand on the next slide, but there's a thing called the buyer's journey. I'm sure most of you have heard about it. It basically goes through the process of why and how and what we do for buyers and how they go through their process of making decisions and ultimately becoming customers and then becoming, and how do we hold on to them so that they become champions and advocates for our product or service, for our business or us. So the first thing you need to do is really understand your client. And if you don't fully understand your client, that's probably the first thing you want to start with today, is determining what that client, that ideal client looks like. The one that buys from you the most, is the most happy with your service, speaks to other people. Do a profile of what motivates them, what they value, what their interests are, what they're interested in, and whatever information you can put together. So you have sort of a little snapshot. Some people would call it a persona or an ideal client profile, a snapshot of who you're targeting. And that goes for business buyers too. So I don't know how many of you are business to business, but it's important to have a snapshot of who you're targeting. And there may be 4 or 5 that you have, maybe 3, maybe only 2, but usually there's more than one. And you really need to understand where they are, because you need to understand what's challenging them to make the decisions to look for your product, and then to what pains they have that they need solved, that you are going to be solving for them. So understand your buyer, understand their pains, challenges, frustrations, concerns, needs. Show them how you solve their problem and meet their needs. Set their expectations for the experience with your company. What can I expect if I'm going to do business with you? Is it, are you really heavy on the customer service? Are you really heavy on the technical support? Are you really heavy on the product diversity? Are you really heavy on the online experience? Where are they? What are they going to experience? Are you going to get back to them within an hour? Are you going to get back to them within 24 hours? All of those little minutiae, but understand what you want to be able to deliver and share that with them, because that adds trust that you're going to, the first couple of things are going to have trust that you know what you're talking about with respect to them. So you're going to resonate and build that trust. When you're setting their expectations for their experience by telling them what they're going to see and feel and do, you're helping to make their decision easier and their process. It shows that you have a process, and it makes their process through your company good, strong, better, trustworthy, builds rapport. And then you have to deliver on your promises, which is where a lot of companies fall down. So those, for messaging, that's really important to understand the background of it. And if we look at a buyer's journey, this is a typical one. So you starting on the left, working your way across, strangers to visitors to leads to customers to promoters to advocates. There's a whole bunch of different charts that basically say the same thing. If you Google it, this one I happen to get from visualstorytell.com. You answer why we solve the problems, but you have to know their problems first, how we solve the problems, what we solve, and then you have that experience. And then as you go through, there's different touch points, and those touch points are listed. So you may have, in this one, they talk about search and online display and direct mail and word of mouth and TV and radio and print. Well, you may not be able to do TV and radio, but maybe you can do print. Maybe you have a social media site, maybe you don't. These are all areas that you could be looking into for communication. And those touch points are really the communication piece. So we'll give you copies of the slides at the end, so you don't have to worry about copying all this down, but it's there. So mapping your customer journey, understanding where they are in the process is really critical, so that you can actually reach them where they need to be reached. I was talking to a client yesterday doing a channel strategy session where we were talking about online. Where do we reach the targets we're going to? They have 3 big target areas. One is a low volume transactional client, which they have good volume with. Another group is a low volume, but repeat, like for longevity. So they keep coming back. And then they have another group that are large buyers, big volume, but very low on the profit margin. So we've decided in the economic place we're in that for the next period of time, we are going to focus on those low volume, but frequent repeat clients in the middle. We're not going to the high volume or high numbers, the one-time purchase, transactional clients, we're going to go into the middle of the road because we see that there's more of a growth opportunity there, and we're going to focus on that group. There will be a ripple effect going out because we'll still get the volume people when they're interested, because the information we're going to be providing for this middle target client is relevant for both the transactional and the large volume, but this is our sweet spot. So we're going to actually shrink our focus to the industry or to the client base that we know is going to work best and has the most profitability and long-term is going to serve us. Excuse me. So, and then we've defined based on the social media channel, we've decided what we're going to communicate in each of those that will best attract and pull that group to us. So when we're going through a customer journey and having that customer profile, you know, in an economic situation we're in now, we could be marketing to everybody prior, which we have been, but we're going to tighten it up. And that way we can better use our budget in that specific area and reduce the budget spend, because that's an issue for the client. We're going to reduce that budget spend and just focus it really strongly there, which will carry it out. Okay, there's some questions there. Okay, Melissa, I'll get to that question. Melissa's asked, what are the three top most effective mediums for marketing? So it's interesting because everyone during the pandemic, everything had to be online, of course, because we were all locked up and away from getting out in space to people. And so online was critical. There's been a shift, of course, with everything opening up again, there's been a shift away, but it's interesting because even companies like Wayfair, which are totally online, are now promoting through direct mail and unaddressed and addressed ad mail. And the challenge is, you know, for those of us who are a little bit older, or we might remember print before the internet, and direct mail pieces are still a very viable way of promoting businesses. And you might want to consider that if you have a budget to do so, or figure out a way you can connect with your VIP. So the top three most effective mediums for marketing, definitely online, still probably number one and highest up there. And that includes your website, but your website is like a brochure. Unless somebody's getting your brochure, you're getting to your brochure, they're not going to read it. So you need to have social media and other drivers driving in. So social media, online, digital. And then I would say word of mouth is probably number three after the direct mail. And the more people who know about what you do and how you do it and can actually understand who you're looking for to connect with them, that's important. So those elevator pitches, you know, as we used to call them, are important, but they're modified now. So three top: online, into face-to-face, in person, some way, personal contact or personal word of mouth referral, and then direct mail. Hope that answers your question, Melissa. I'm sure we could have a long discussion on that as you're in social. Okay, so the next area is the management plan, and it says crisis management plan here, but honestly, it's like there's no crisis. Let's just set our goals. Let's just have a management plan and write it down, and we start with setting our goals. What do we need to accomplish? What are the numbers behind what we want to accomplish? Or do we want 10 new clients a week? Do we want 100 new clients a week? What kind of clients do we want? Setting those goals are critical because we have to have something to track later on, and we'll talk about metrics. So getting busy. So you need to summarize your plan. As we talked about before, some of us have it written down, some of us don't, some of us have it in our head, some of us communicate it and otherwise. But if you have a team, you absolutely need to have the team understand what you're doing, and you need to have accountability within your team to make sure they're following through and your company is following through, and tracking so that you can adjust your plan as you go. So in your plan, what it is that we're focusing on. If it's a new focus, let's talk about that, and why. What's the situational review? If you can discuss that with your staff and your team, if you have one, great. And if not, it's only for you. And maybe if you have some contractors who are freelancers who are doing some marketing for you, maybe you have a social media support person, they need to know what that plan is so they can drive the messaging better. How are you uniquely positioned to help your clients right now? So everyone is feeling the pinch in some way. How are you addressing that in your messaging? And how are you addressing that with everything else you're doing with your products, with your value, your pricing, whatever it might be? And I get that there's a whole bunch of supply chain issues that's driving prices up. If you have to raise your prices because you've got supply chain issues, you need to communicate that why to your client base as well, in a way that's not whiny, but is factual, because they need to know. If in most rational people, not to say everyone on the planet's rational, because we're seeing it, what's happening in the US, it's debatable, but we do need to look at communicating. Open communication is critical, especially if you have clients that are in the Gen Y and Gen Z group. They want to know, they want transparency, and they want authenticity. So you need to be sharing your plans. Where can you add value, creating opportunities, and what do you need to do next? That's all your plan, your summary needs to have in it. What are you focusing on and why? How are you helping clients right now? Where are we adding value, and what opportunities can we find or have people look for? And what do we need to do next? Okay, so there's some questions here. Oh, no, you're welcome. Melissa, just responding, you're welcome. Okay, we will look at messaging next. Sorry, Melissa, I'm gonna just have to turn off the chat there. Communicating with clear messaging is really important. Your team needs to know, as we talked about, what it is. We also need to set with the team what set their expectations and have them understand what their impact is on the plan. If you want community engagement, if you want lower attrition rates, if you want your team to be helping sell and whatever else it is, they need to understand how they fit in the big picture. It's so important. With your clients, you need to be clear on checking in with them, seeing what they need, seeing if their needs have changed, test your theories on your intake. And then you need to be telling them how you can add value, or understanding from them. Surveying them is great, asking them face-to-face, asking them in a survey online, whatever you need to do, find out how you can add value for them and what they want. Because if you listen to your clients, they will tell you exactly what they want and need from you, and you can take it from there. And then within the community, you need to create your opportunities, find those partnerships and collaborations you can work with. Keep connecting. It's so important. When people get frightened, we all tend to, do the caveman thing, and we get into the caves and we hide out. And that happens all the time. And especially, we saw it in the pandemic, though it was forced, but we've seen it since. A lot of people haven't come out of hiding yet. And so with this recession in play, we need to keep connecting to make sure that we're reaching people where they live, work, and play. And then my favorite topic, and I'm sure it's not everybody's favorite topic, but monitoring the numbers. When you're putting your goals together, you really need to make sure that you have metrics in place and goals, like numbers assigned to your goals, timelines assigned to your goals, and all of that. So the first biggest thing with the numbers is cash flow. We all can get stuck very easily if we don't know what's coming, and then all of a sudden we have a huge bill, and maybe HST is due, or maybe it's source deductions. And I'm just saying right now, I hope you're all paying those on time if you have staff. But we also have other obligations that come through, and we need to be prepared for, the roof starts to leak if we own it, or if we're leasing a building or something. We need to make sure that we're covered. So cash flow is really important. And if anybody does not have a cash flow for the business, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I plead and beg with you to please put one together, because it will save your tush. Budget, we need to know what money you can spend. Like I was talking about that one client, we had to actually reduce the budget expense, what was going forward for not only their ad spend with Google ads and online boosted posts and whatever else it was, but we also had to adjust our consulting budgets and some other things. And that's fine. I mean, we expect to be able to do that, but you need to be honest with yourself and transparent, and your business needs to be honest and transparent to know what you can afford to spend and what you can't. Then decide on what metrics you want to track. Do you want new clients? Do you want a client of a certain time? Do you want more product sales in a specific area? If you don't know what to, if you don't have a metric, how are you tracking? How do you know if you're succeeding or not? Do you know what your profitable products are, or services are? Do you know what your collection numbers are? There's so many things you could be looking at, but from a marketing standpoint, you really need to know how many clients you have, because here's what you need to know. There's 3 things. 1, how many clients do you have? 2, what's the average transaction value for a client? What's an average sale look like across the board? And number 3 is how many transactions per client in a 12-month period? Those are the 3 things you need to know. How many customers, how many transactions, average cost per transaction. If you know that, then you know how to adjust, because even a 2 to 5% adjustment, if you did 10% on each of those, 10% more clients, 10% more price, and 10% more transactions per client average, you're looking at a 300% growth. You're more than doubling your business. So decide on what metrics to track and how to track them, and set up a system to track them, then check them. Plan, do, check, act. I think that was a Deming cycle. And then tweak where necessary, because that becomes your focus. Okay, so your numbers become your focus. It's so, so important. And if you need help setting up those numbers, or you don't know what to track or where to start, the basics, if you're doing social media, for example, you have to have goal for everything. So if your goal on social media, first of all, social media is to create engagement and to broaden your message to amplify it. So how are we amplifying our message? How much, what percentage? Where are we starting from today, and where do we want to get to? How many times do we, if it's click through to the website, how many click-throughs are we getting? That's a metric. And you can track that with Google Analytics. You can track that with insights through the platforms, specifically when I'm talking about social media. If you're talking about so click-throughs to the website. And then on your website, if you have e-commerce, things like, how many people are getting to the shopping cart? How many people are getting to the checkout page? Like, you can track those things and put those measures in place so you know what's going on. If you're a retail location, you want to know how many people are coming into the store, what time of day they're coming into store, when are they, what day of the week are they most busy? What are your highest products that are selling and why? Because that may be shifting. What are your, all of those things are things to track. And if you're a service-based company where you're offering, say, home-based services, you want to know, maybe you want to take a look at the neighborhoods that I think I see a couple of roofing in here, for example. You may want to know how old the houses are in a certain neighborhood. When was a neighborhood built? Because at some point, 10 to 15 years in, they're going to want to start looking at redoing roofing. And then also mining your past clients for repeat business. So there's all sorts of metrics, and it's all dependent on what your business is, but know what, pick 5 metrics, 3 to 5 metrics to follow and get those in place and track them religiously so that you can tweak. You need to have those goals in place. Okay, so focus on what you can control. We can control our numbers. We can control our attitude. We can control our messaging. We can control the expectations by our processes. We can control our budgets if you're tracking. Determine what your clients and prospects need. Who are the ones that are going to be buying? Who do we need to farm along? How do we need to make them comfortable in order to make a decision to work with you? How do we solve their problems? Those are the things that we need to look at. Map your plan and your communication points. So what are those touch points that you're going to be reaching out through? You really need to think about hard and fast. Like, if you're on Twitter right now, are you going to continue on Twitter? Is everyone on Twitter? Are you doing business to business? Is LinkedIn going to be better than Pinterest? Are you going to be, if it's social media, is a direct mail? Do you have 500 clients that you could send something directly to and say, hey, we have this new subscription service for, maintaining some aspect of your office or your home. Would you like, here's some information. So what kind of things can we do to, what communication points, what touch points do we have for those clients, and how are we going to map them out, and how are we going to focus our messaging so that we are getting going where they live, work, and play, and then act on your plan and monitor it. And that's basic planning. yet so few people do it. And I'm hoping that you guys will all do it now as a result of this, if you're not already. So what are you ready to do? Are you ready to build this out? Are you ready to start looking at new ways? Or do you have any questions? Because right now is the time to ask me questions, because we can do some hot seats if you'd like. So who has got a question or a situation that they'd like some help with right now?
Feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat.
Yeah, please. Any big questions? Any burning questions?
Yeah. So what would be, you said 3 to 5 matrices to monitor.
Yeah.
What would be, in general, would be the, top 3 that a lot of companies say, this is what I have to monitor? So is there some things that you give advice and direction of key things that would be important to monitor?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of business. So is your
Yes,
business service-based or
it's
product?
Service-based. Service-based.
Okay, so service-based, you want to know how many transactions, how many clients you have, those 3 that I told you. How many clients have average cost per client or average transaction value per client, how much they're buying in each sale, and your average package price, selling price. Those 3 things, first of all. So those are the basic metrics for understanding where your business is coming from and what's happening within it when a client comes to you and they're working with you. If you're talking about bringing clients in the marketing side of things, your big metrics will be around how many people do we need to expose ourselves to in a marketing sense? How many people from that exposure are going to actually become true leads? And how many of those leads are we closing? So how many people are we talking to? How many people are interested in what we have to say? And how many people, those interested people, are actually buying something from us?
Laura, I love what you said earlier about knowing your target. I found that is very helpful for me when it comes to marketing, that you can zone in and say, okay, I'm looking for 35 to 55-year-old females. And then bam, that way, when you're doing your social media, you check out the moms groups and that sort of thing. And that's how you get to connect with your clients.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about metrics, it's how many of those people have we reached? So Melissa, to your point, how many 35 to 30 to 45-year-old women have we talked to, have seen our message? So that could be online, it could be it could be followers, it could be amplification, engagement. That's how many are interested in having a conversation with us. It could be how the reach, if it's in certain areas, what's the reach, what are the impressions? That's social media also. That's how many people we've spoken to or have seen our conversation about what it is and what we do. And then the lead portion would be like how many have turned into leads, have interest. That could be the engagement rate. That could be how many click through to the website. That could be how many at a trade show, how many people have signed up for something, if you've got a draw or something, or how many people have come to the booth and actually spoken to you. And then when you get to the third aspect is how many sales are we having made. That could be how many people, ideally you're looking at conversion rates, right? You're looking at how many people actually buy from you. From the number of people who are exposed, how many actually buy? That's what you want to know. And that number is, how many people put their credit card down, how many people in social media, it's the conversion rate isn't necessarily the sales rate. The conversion rate can be the click through to the website. So it's a little bit different. Like a Google ad, you can track all the way through if you've got an e-commerce site. But if you have a website that doesn't have e-commerce, or maybe just has a form, maybe you're pushing people through to the form and you want them to sign up for a newsletter, or you want them to sign up for something, that's a conversion as well. So you're looking at how many exposure, how many leads, and how many conversions, whatever that conversion might be. Does that help answer the question, Bruce?
Yes. Yeah, I mean,
Does that give you enough?
Yeah, no, that's good. that was
Was
good.
were you looking from a marketing standpoint? Were you looking from an operational standpoint for the answer for that question?
I was looking for a general, so it was both. So we do track both. It's easy. Let's put it this way. It's fairly I wouldn't say easy, but we're able to track, and we need to start tracking more operationally
Yes.
versus tracking marketing. So that's a harder thing for us to do because of we're such a broad-based business from a marketing perspective, but very focused based business from an operational perspective, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So we can basically, I was just sitting here thinking, I could say to you as a group, I don't even know how many people are there, but how many of you people, how many folks in the room have actually used home care? And so the reality is a lot of people actually at different points may or may not use home care, will always may have a need. So our challenge is to figure out where to go, right? Like where to
Right.
target.
Right.
Not
Where are
easy.
you going to reach? Where are you going to reach the people who are your potential prospects?
Yes.
Yeah. So
'Cause
so what metrics do you think you would be tracking? You should be tracking better that you're not tracking now, or you're not tracking well now?
Well, I don't think we track anything from a marketing perspective. That's why I'm sitting here today, right? So that's our reality. We do everything word of mouth. I mean, we do have a good setup, but we don't have a good system, if that makes any sense.
And that's critical, as you know,
So-
for growing
so-
and scaling.
Yeah, so we have a setup. So we have a website. We have an online presence. We do Facebook. We do all these things, but we don't really have a plan. So that's why I'm here. That's one of the reasons I'm coming here today, is to think about how we could plan. That's what I keep talking. And my wife is the owner of the company, so it's so Michelle's the owner. That was the other individual. So it's I keep harping on this idea of a plan, which was kind of interesting that you talked about. So it's all about having a plan and then trying to execute on that plan.
Yeah.
We don't have a plan. Our
Okay.
reality is we get our clients word of mouth, and we do a great job of servicing our clients, and our clients are really happy. We spend a lot of time in the minutia of the business, which is trying to satisfy our clients and make sure the shifts are covered.
Yeah, production and day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So I will tell you that, there are different stages to a business. There's, if you think of it as a life cycle, okay? There are different stages to a business, and the things that you need when you're just starting and you're basically an infant, you're learning how to crawl and then walk. So there's certain things that you need to do at that point. When you're a little bit further along, when you're a teenager, and when you're a young adult business that's been around for a while, you've got some cash flow. It's not always steady. You have to build out. You don't necessarily have a management team. Maybe the owner is the decision maker, is the bottleneck. You need to know what those next stages are. So, and then you get into the prime, the space where everything's moving hunky dory and everything's lovely. And then I just said hunky dory, didn't I? Okay. So as you're going through the business stages, like, you're probably exactly where you should be if you haven't been focused and meaningfully planned where you want to be next, or know what you have to do next, because systems and processes are one of the cornerstones, are really, in my mind, the cornerstone, in the two cornerstones, in addition with management team, in getting to a point where you can actually grow.
Right.
So having that plan written down of how you are going to grow, what are those key strategies? Like, we need to put in systems, we need to put in processes, we need to put in the right people, we need to get the right money, whatever it is, though, that's another next step in growth. So it's important to have that plan, because then you can stick to it. As you're growing, though, you still need to keep an eye always on where our clients coming from, and how are we monitoring and making sure that they're staying engaged, and then advocating for us. Like, that's the key on a marketing standpoint and a client experience, is getting them through that process where those happy clients are now advocating for us, because they become word of mouth, and all they do is refer. Like that, they just refer to you. You could probably back off on your marketing efforts, because you've got this team on the road, this free sales team who are, not only buying from you, but now they're promoting you without any monetary financial responsibility on your part, which is great. So that's where you want to get to, or one of the places you could get to. But you're right there when you said growing and scaling, you need a plan. You absolutely need a plan. And I can promise you 100% of the time, when you have the plan, you will build. I can give you example after example of clients where we put that process through, and I'm just so happy when clients sell to this, or when they get to a point where they can retire or whatever it might be. It's awesome. So
Sounds good to me.
do it. Okay, we have some other hands up. I got I see Stuart's hand up, and I see, is it Divya?
Divya, yep.
Yeah, okay. Divya.
Hi, thank
Hi.
you for this great presentation. It's lovely. It's so much learning. I was hoping if you could, you talked about that big segment in the chunk, which is just sitting on it and processing of how things are moving during this downward time.
Yes.
While you are doing marketing and say social marketing, and you're getting those impressions, you're getting those reach, but the conversion in terms of actual leads is where it is sort of getting harder, because there's that segment is still watching.
Right.
Is there a sort of you could provide some sort of an insight of what could be the strategies to try to nudge that segment a little bit to sort of converting into leads?
Okay, well, first of all, you need to be, so can I ask what kind of business you're in? Do you have retail, service, business to business?
So I have an interior design business.
Interior design, great. So, so people are going to move when they can move and when they can afford to move. And they may, even with interior design, that means you're probably also dealing, you can keep yourself unmuted because we're going to go back and forth a bit.
Okay.
Your clients may be, I don't know how big they are and where they fall in that big, that the money's no object, and I don't worry about it. I'm just going to go ahead. And then there's the group that's like, we may be tightening up. So there's those two things to consider. And then there's your supply chain issue you're probably experiencing, and you may have to come up with alternative resources. So when you're talking about, somebody in the top of that pyramid that, money's no object, like there's nothing going on, I'm all happy to spend, or I have it and I'm going to spend it because I want to help the economy. Those folks are the ones that are going to buy no matter what, if they like you. That's not who you need to concentrate on. You need to you need to concentrate on those other people who you may have a project in motion with, but they're kind of putting the brakes on, or maybe they're rethinking some of the finishes or the level of what you're presenting, right? They don't want the premium package anymore. Now they want maybe a little bit less of a package. And so you need to meet them where they are with their psychology. If they don't have the budget for you, if you can accommodate that and be mindful of that, then that's your best bet. If they need to delay the project, like you're going to have to look at, you can't force somebody to spend if they don't have it. Like, I'm not going to go to the store and I'm not going to buy, a $10,000 item if I can't afford to buy the $10,000 item, if my credit card's already racked up and I'm nervous. Like, you're just not, that buyer psychology is really going to be at play here. So you have to play to, what the outcomes will be for them. And then the ones who are on the fence will shift over. That's really what you're talking about, is how do I get them to, if they're on the fence, how do I get them to come to my side? Correct.
So the ones I'm talking about, like the ones who haven't really reached to me as yet, like the one who has reached to me, I can certainly work with them on wherever they want to be, whether they want to wait, hold, or in terms of the budget and monetary. So that's sort of what I feel is sort of within my control, where I can work to satisfy their needs and service them. What I'm trying to figure out is like, so for example, talking about social media. So when you have the social media or you're doing PPC and SEM, you see a quite good sort of an engagement over there when you're promoting and doing all your marketing things over there. But that engagement which you're seeing over there, converting that to the people who are reaching out to you for any inquiries or trying to have those conversations. So and I feel like right now that's because people are sort of holding it up because they're holding the cash flow to them because they don't know what's going in the economy.
So they're
right
not
now?
buying, they're not buying today, but they could be buying in the future.
Yeah, they could be buying in
Okay.
the future, right?
So-
Yeah.
And you want to influence the future.
Yeah, how do I influence them a bit more, sort of a thing?
So Melissa brought up a great point in the chat, which is, is about email marketing.
Mhm.
So everyone should know that you want, as you're growing a business, you want to build assets in your business. That's what you want to do if you want to eventually sell or retire. You need to have assets, especially if you're going to look for investments in the future. So if one of your assets is your client database. So let me be very clear on social media, you do not own your client database. All your
Right.
friends and followers are not your asset.
Mhm.
So you need a tool to convert those followers, those people who are engaging on social media into your asset, which is your email list, your
Mhm.
database.
Yeah.
And so you need to be able to do a couple of things online if that's your major source of lead generation. You need to educate and inform in such a way that they are interested to keep the conversation happening.
Okay.
And you want to keep that conversation going until they're ready to buy. And you need to, in that conversation, you need to continue offering opportunities for them to engage with you at a low risk, no cost
Mhm.
point. And so offering, there's other people on the call here where I know where we've suggested offering tools, offering advice, resources they can download, sharing stories on an email newsletter, like a reason to sign up to get that newsletter keeps them in your funnel, and they're your asset that you can continue to nurture. So I would say get some sort of resource that they will sign up for, and sign up for give you their email address.
Okay.
Create a tool that will in a consistent contact where you're sending out individually to them, not to everybody on social media, just to the people who have already said, or they put their hand up, I'm interested, I'm just not ready yet, is what
Yeah.
they're saying. Create a series of tools or communications where you're letting them know what's happening. Maybe right now during the economic recession, the economic time that we're in, you're offering ways to save money. Here's how you
Okay.
can freshen up and save money freshening up.
Mhm.
Here's how you can, maintain the health and maintain your, and not just in the design world, but maintain your gutters or your your HVAC system, whatever it is, so that you're not going to be given a big bill at the end.
Mhm.
And with design, you could be talking about, if you're thinking about a gas fireplace versus an electric fireplace, your gas fireplace is going to run you X dollars, but an electric fireplace will run you considerably less, and it will cost you less to maintain because gas rates have just gone up and electricity has gone down. So, you could be offering pieces of advice in your communications that helps people to keep better informed, keeps you as their trusted advisor, and helps you keep them on your mailing list until they're ready to make a decision. You basically want to become the trusted advisor in your space and offer value that they aren't getting elsewhere.
Right.
Or curate that information. Does that help?
No, it's very helpful. Yes. Yes,
Great.
certainly. Thank you.
Great. Okay, how are we doing for questions? Anybody else? Stuart, your
Do you have
hand.
a question, Stuart?
Hi, actually, my hand was actually raised for in the past when a question was asked, but really just wanted to thank you for this. It's been really, really helpful, and would definitely like to have a little more conversation on this one. I'm trying to get my side of the business up and running up here in Canada, so would really love some help, and this has been really beneficial. Thank you.
You're very welcome. I'm glad you were here.
Thanks, Stuart. Does anybody else have any further questions before we wrap up for the day?
I was just wondering, what program do people use for when they collect emails and they send them out for the email marketing? I'm not familiar.
Oh, so you could use, there's all sorts out there. Constant Contact is one of the Canadian ones that's big. MailChimp is another one that's inexpensive and available and you can do a lot with. I find MailChimp, while most of the plans are free and easy to use, I find their navigation, I find it challenging, and I'm tech person, but it gets the job done. And if you can learn how to navigate it, it's great. Constant Contact, I think the chamber uses. Is that
We
right,
do.
Sandra? Yeah.
Yes,
Do you
we
like
do.
it?
Yes,
Yeah,
very
I used to
much.
use it for years ago, years and years. There's several others. You just have to I would just Google it. Yeah, so there's expensive ones that do a lot more, and then there's less expensive ones that are built into, and then there's ones that are built into CRMs like Salesforce and things like that. You can build them into. So
Thank
it
you.
depends what you need. Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Great.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for your time today, Laura. That was great.
My
Sharing
pleasure.
all those wonderful insights. We really appreciate it. And as Laura mentioned, we will send out Laura's presentation to everybody today. I did want to mention that the next presentation is scheduled for November 24th at noon, and it will be all about how to optimize your digital marketing program. So you can go ahead onto the Chamber's website and register for that session if you already have not. And I also just wanted to mention, we do have a networking breakfast happening next week. It is on Tuesday at the Holiday Inn, 8:30 to 9:30. So we'd love to have you join us as well if you're able. And again, you can register online, but thanks for joining us today. Thank you again, Laura. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Thanks everyone for being here. Happy to help.
Thanks, everybody.
Later. See you on
Thank
the
you. Great
24th.
job.
Take care.
Bye.